So we're going to be talking about the key ingredients for successful advocacy. For those that are in the room that need a short break to grab some water, we have water in here and coffee and tea out of the room, and toilet facilities for anyone that needs that are right outside the door. Those of you on the phone, hopefully, and online, I hope you know where your own coffee, tea, and toilet facilities are. So.
Oh, you are terrible, my friend.
Yeah.
I have had my share of.
Yeah. So we're gonna take just a couple of minutes. Those online, just give us a minute for people to take a little bit of a break here. Feel free, those of you online also, if you want to communicate with each other, you can actually do that. You can unmute yourselves and you guys can have conversations. We'll hear you, but that's okay. So if you have questions or want to talk to each other, that's fine too. And thank you for your patience. Yep. And Maria, when we come back from just our short toilet break, we'll have you introduce yourself so that everyone on the phone knows who you are and what organization you're with, okay?
Okay.
Okay, great. So just give us a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
No,
I probably led the.
no, it's totally fine. We're just trying to.
No.
It's a little technically challenging, you know. Yeah.
I mean, the context is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, and the fact, I mean, it's hard to get the fact that we minus the, you know, challenges.
I agree with you. The quality for that for the diversity.
Do you think that process this? Yeah. 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 So it's
My work fix.
So Jordan can send you all the
We're
information.
sitting around here and they can hear us.
Well, they can hear us and we can hear them.
Yeah. Someone else recommended this to me. Actually,
So
I had one.
it's phenomenal. That's okay.
In
They know we're.
WSSCC.
I highly recommend this.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
highly recommend it. It's been phenomenal. And we got, so there's a small cord and then we extended it so we can be, it's basically hooked into the computer here. We could be, someone doesn't have it right at this.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant.
all in all,
I'll write that down actually, because yes, I
she can send you the link to first photos. Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great. Awesome. When did you arrive? Oh my God.
I knew I had all of those, and I just had a couple of things coming with some deadlines.
Okay.
Before the end of close business in Europe today.
If you have
I'm going
a,
to duck out.
Okay.
Probably at 2:30 or something.
okay. As long as it's after your presentation.
Presentation.
I'm going to get it from you at lunch.
Okay.
Yeah, so not a problem. But it would be good when I'm in New York. It would be great for us to sit down and talk a little bit more about the landscape. And there's a couple of things that I'm going to be heading over to UNICEF anyway when I'm there. But I think I'm going to come in and take early. I'll be there for NHM meetings.
Okay.
They're doing, we created NHM tenure strategy. And so that that'll be part of the meeting and we'll be presenting that.
Okay, well look, that's reassuring because I was looking at the agenda and I'm thinking, well, can I try and dash back at 4, you know, 2 weeks in?
No, we can talk about that and the landscape will be due. Yeah, I'm here all week.
So the other option is
Yeah.
and then we follow up with the discussion when you're in New York.
Yeah. And the landscape is something that I'll share probably by the end of this week with everyone who is here. And then are you going to UNC?
I'd like to, but I think timing-wise I just can't.
So if we can get there for at least a day, that would be great. There will be a closed door that we are hosting with IRC. Mostly us. It's really it's kind of a follow-on to this, but it's really to about tangible ways that we will engage all of us, everyone will engage in advocacy going forward.
All right.
So that half day, if you or Clarissa, but it's, yeah. That would be great.
Yeah.
And that Save the Date will go out. We didn't want to confuse people with Stockholm, so it'll go out right after, early, not next week, but the week after, so people can get it on their radar. But we're doing an open session of just kind of general presentations of the interesting things that are happening. But we're
Even just through 3-4 presentations this morning, you get a sense of this.
yeah.
Partly it's just making sure that everyone's aware of everyone else, so that
Yeah. Well, and coordinated efforts. I think that's the thing that's been challenged. More and more I hear about like who's really interesting team and not really interesting thing, and the knowledge sharing that's happening. Unless it's unless that knowledge sharing is something that is planned for, it's something that happens ad hoc. And I think a lot of value. I mean, just from the last conversation about MHM, about who's learning from what. I mean, there's this great opportunity, and not everyone knows what other people are doing. So just trying to figure out some more coordinated ways to have the advocacy specific sessions either in line or maybe even online conversations that are happening effectively. So,
well, one of the things I'm going to mention at the end of my is that, Fiorella, my colleague, has been leading some good discussions about advocacy with African countries after Africa Slack, where we had a day and she was carried on from there. So again, just to be very conscious of
right. All right. I think we've got the masses back in the room here. Thanks to those online for your patience. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So, what sorry, hold on one more second, those online. 1 second. Raul, if you just push the cappuccino button on the space. Jane, are you there?
Jen?
Yeah,
I am. I'm still here.
Yes. Catherine, I think had a quick question for you.
No, Jen. Mine is just, you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate you for a good presentation. It's also giving us an insight on what to do in Kenya. And that's a greeting. You're doing a good job. And my greetings to Doreen.
I will.
Yeah, so we can learn from each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yes.
All right, so the first thing that we wanted to talk about with the key ingredients, I think some of the trends and things that we've seen, and I'm actually going to ask Patrick to jump in a little bit here, but this is just an open discussion about the different things. I would say there's been a couple of things we've identified that are some of the key ingredients that are needed for success. So does anyone want to jump in and say based on what we've heard, what do people think are some of those key ingredients? What's really needed? And folks on the phone, if you have something to say, just unmute yourself and jump right in.
Speaking with one voice.
So, speaking with one voice, it's a good one. Oh, sorry, Maria, really quickly, can you introduce yourself? We had an additional person join, so Maria, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what organization you're with.
My name is Maria Shuma. I'm Executive Director of Promotes, a non-profit organization established in 2005 in Maputo that works in the wash sector between the community and the municipal council.
Great. Thanks, Maria. Thank you so much for joining, too, and we're looking forward to your presentation this afternoon.
Okay.
So, ingredients. We had, Hannah just said speaking with one voice, which I think is good. To follow up with that, I just wanted to echo some of what Jane was saying earlier about not everyone always wants the same, has the same objectives. So I think it's gathering the people who have the same objectives as you do, and then speaking with one voice. So not doing something individually, but not necessarily feeling like you have to have absolutely everybody on board with that one thing, but find the key people who are most important in getting that message across. Yes.
But it's
Hi,
also
this is
good to know. Sorry.
WSCC.
Yeah, Jane, hold on one second. Andrew's going to go, and then we'll have you go.
I think it was really interesting how we ended the last session. I think it was a good segue into this learning platform, knowledge sharing of best practices from countries, and to be able to exchange those ideas of what works and what doesn't work.
Great. Jane, you want to go ahead?
Yes, I just wanted to add to your submission that it's good to know those that are not on your side. You need to map them. You need to know the reasons why they are not supporting you, and you need to know their levels, their levels of influence, their levels of authority and power. What if they can swing the whole advocacy campaign towards a different direction? So it's good to map all the people, including those that are on your side and those that are not or may not be, or probably they just don't have all the information to enable them to make the right decisions in your favor.
Great. Amanda, go ahead.
I thought one of the things that came out of, I think it was in, one of the earlier discussions, was the attention to detail and just work. Look at the national budget, look at the regional budget, look at the district budget, see if it's happening, and just keep at it and put in the efforts to be looking at it.
Yeah, to follow up on what Amanda just said, I think it's important that Jane mentioned the amount of time and over time, how long the process, especially for budgeting, takes and budgeting cycles, and to get some changes. So I think just recognizing that is also important. Go ahead, Ryan, and then Catherine.
Yes, this is Ryan from Iowa Consultants. Picking up on something that Jane said earlier, in understanding doing a stakeholder analysis to understand not only amongst the advocates what different perspectives are and what different priorities are, but then also on the target of the advocacy, understanding from government or donors what their perspectives are, to understand maybe there's tensions amongst different ministries as to what their priorities are, and being able to speak to and address the different ministries. And then also a thing of just picking the low-hanging fruit, which it seemed like Jane had said earlier about they build on existing systems, they have additional grants, analyze those as opposed to proposing a totally different system.
Yeah. Catherine, go ahead.
Mine is just to be clear on what idea or ideas you are looking for, so that you are specific. This is not one idea. There could be many ideas, but come one goal. That is clear.
Oh, great. Darius, are you on the phone? Darius? Maybe? Maybe not. Okay, we'll just keep going. Don.
Hi, everybody. John Oldfield here. I think all of you know that I consider the key to WASH advocacy success getting grown-ups paid money to do this, having professionals paid real money. Right? Other people might be more diplomatic about it and just call it capacity building. But I think you also know that, with all due respect to all of our volunteer work, I don't like volunteers. Volunteer work is not sustainable. And this was the sort of the founding principle behind at least WASH Advocates' contribution to the WASH Advocacy Challenge, both of these rounds. I think salaries are the most important thing to WASH Advocacy success. I can be much more specific, but I don't think I need to be, and that's a message that I'm doing my best to bring to the WASH funding community, both public and private.
Great. Anyone else on the phone? Or sorry, online?
Can I just add to what Tom said?
Yeah, please.
Again, another interesting thing that came out of Jane's presentation, because she said something about advocacy, and we know what we're doing. We've done it on other issues before. And I think, you know, a lot of us work on WASH, and we've always worked on WASH, etc. And, you know, learning from the success of advocacy on other issues, on climate or environment, etc. And treating advocacy, as you were saying, as a profession, as something that there are skills and there are ways to do it. Some people are good at it, and some people have a track record of being able to do it. Sort of recognize it as that rather than a slightly amateurish volunteer sort of activity.
Yeah, I found that a lot of the conversations I have around advocacy, pretty much across the board, it doesn't matter what country, developing, you know, any country, anywhere in the world, is that advocacy is done ad hoc most of the time. And because it's done ad hoc, a lot of the things that we just talked about here are not, are just, you know, an afterthought. So it's important that, you know, we have allies. Well, we work with this group all the time, so that's going to be the one group that we're going to work with. So we, and I don't mean to pick on WaterAid, but they're not in the room, so we'll pick on WaterAid. But so, you know, maybe, you know, Tawasanet has worked with WaterAid in the past, so therefore that's the most logical partner that we think that we want to work with on this particular advocacy issue. Or they're, you know, and maybe that, and not to say that they aren't, but I think the mapping that Jane was talking about is really important for that purpose, so that you know who all the players are, and maybe there is a more appropriate player that should be a part of that conversation. But I think, you know, my contribution to the conversation here would be to really have not only the focus, but to be really strategic, which is kind of a word that we throw around a lot, but to actually have a plan for advocacy that goes through step by step. So the mapping is a part of that, making sure we have the correct messages to make sure that there's a focus is all part of that process. But stop doing advocacy ad hoc. I think that's what is going to be a piece to success, is planning for advocacy the same way that you plan for programs or services, or the way that you would work with the government or anything like that. So planning for advocacy, I think, would be my contribution. Catherine, go ahead.
I think one of this in Kenya, I passed previous presentations, I didn't get that one. The legal partner support what you're talking for. It's very, very important. I don't want to assume that those countries don't have the legal framework, but it's very, very important to build that legal framework. At least to have some evidence, you know, regulations or legislation to refer to. That's one point. The other one, which came out very strong, especially from Mozambique, the evidence-based information that you need to use to advocate. Statistical.
Great. Anything from, oh yeah, Patrick.
Can I say something?
Yeah, Jane, go ahead.
I also wanted to add that one of the things that especially civil society organizations tend to forget or make very big assumptions around is related to government. We think we know how government works, but in most cases we don't. And we take that for granted. And then we always think that, that's what they refer to us as. You know, these are civil society organizations, especially international organizations. They are coming in with the money. They have their own agenda. And then we just get into it, as the earlier speaker said, in an ad hoc manner. Government is very well structured. They know what they want. They know how to get it. They're not just seated there waiting for civil society organizations. So how you do the entry depends on how much you know about how government works and how it delivers. The structures that are there right from the national level to the village level, you need to know them. You need to know what is it that is changing within government and why it's changing. In Uganda, we've recently launched the second National Development plan, and everybody is talking about that. So you come in with your different priorities, and they are not within NDP. They'll all look at you. And when you work for a sector like the one we work in, the water and environment sector, it's so organized. The working groups are active, right from the national up to the district level. And so you have to just know how they work. And if you don't do that, then the frustrations will be so many. And you will end up being, we call it in USNet, landing in the red book. And nobody wants to be in the red book of the ministry. You will never be invited for anything. They'll never share any information with you. They will not take you for, seriously. And then they'll say, hey, in any case, you have the money, so go ahead and have the money. But they also know what needs to change right from policy level. So being able to know all that can put you in a better position, to help them with the changes, because these are changes that they also want to see in place.
Great. Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And I think building on what Jane said and what Scott is saying, when we started doing the Triple S work that Jane was talking about over the last few years, which was very explicitly where we identified Triple S as a large-scale change process. So the whole project was set up with I guess you could say a set of advocacy aims and where we believe the sector, we wanted to push the sector to. But it was funny because in those early discussions, we felt the need to not even call it advocacy, and we coined this slightly silly term called advocacy, which describes very much, I think, but actually everything we're talking about around the table is what we would have called advocacy.
Yeah.
Because, and I think Jane said something at the start of her first presentation about, to a lot of us, I think, coming not from advocacy space originally, our vision and our image of advocacy is very much campaigning, sort of public campaigning, placards outside the ministry banging the drums, and actually almost all of what we've been doing subsequently is this sort of slow, patient work, mapping stakeholders, identifying champions, developing information, bringing information to the table, understanding the policy and government processes into which that fits. It's what you call grown-up work, And actually, but I think, having said all of that, I'm now sitting here at the start of a very major lobby and advocacy initiative. And actually, I think we used the word advocacy, frankly, it was probably because of Gates pressure, because they're so allergic to lobby because of all your charity tax rules in the US, where lobbyisting has been explicitly political, but it is lobby, basically. Where is the space for that bigger stuff? And where does the drum banging fit into this more patient, longer term, more granular, very specific 13%, 15% stuff we're talking about? Because I think that's fantastic when you're talking within the sector. That's fantastic. That works. We know that works with ministries of water, ministries of health, to a certain extent ministries of finance, looking for step change. Where we've got to now is we actually think we're hitting the end of what that can bring us to. It can get you from 13% or to 15% operations within the existing budget. That if you want to go a step change to get radically more money from government flowing into WASH, you've got to do something different. Because that's not, we feel either we're talking to the wrong people, we're not getting far enough up the political food chain, we're talking at the ministerial and technocratic level, and we think we should be talking at the presidential level. We think we should be getting the rock stars on board who can motivate and influence the presidents. And I think if we're talking a post-SDG agenda, for me, that's what I'm looking at and looking for experience in discussions like this. To hear how do we get there? How do we get? Someone persuaded Modi that he should go for Swachh Bharat. How did that happen? Because that's what we're all looking for. That's what Swaz's looking for.
Yeah. Great.
How about, this is John, how about advocacy mainstreaming? We had gender mainstreaming, we have climate mainstreaming, but you know, maybe a commitment this group can make here is to do whatever we can to essentially lobby the WASH sector that no conversation about a grant, public or private, will take place without advocacy being a part of that. And we're essentially lobbying the WASH sector to do any program, no matter how big, no matter how small, directly with the public sector in that geography, not in spite of the public sector in that geography. What does that mean? That means make sure that this is built into proposals, programmatically and financially. Make sure that the mayor or the governor or the relevant cabinet minister or the MP is invited to day one of the design phase of a project, not simply to the ribbon cutting ceremony. I mean, there's no excuse not to do that, because I don't think anybody inside or outside of this room is saying, well, sure, we can meet the SDGs without the public sector. There's no possible way we're going to get to 100% without the public sector. The top of that pyramid, whether it's a municipality, or a state, a province, or a country, being in the driver's seat. And then it all goes from there, the role of the private sector, the role of the CFO, et cetera. So I'm gonna lose sleep over this advocacy mainstreaming term and see what we can learn from other sectors, from other groups that have been able to mainstream their issues into these political conversations.
Catherine, go ahead.
I just wanted to give a practical example to support what June is saying, that when we realized that our governance program was doing very well because it uses advocacy, the other WASH projects that were doing the supply, instead of now using the staff from that department to input in the others, and then there were more results, there were better results in terms of the duty bearers and the rights holders understanding the program. So we were already, like, as an organization, feeling very, very critical that we inbuilt advocacy in all the program. Yeah. But of course, as Jim said, not always that advocacy of pushing people,
right,
but persuading.
Yeah. Great. So I have a couple more questions that we don't have a whole lot of time. We have about 5 minutes before we need to break for lunch here. But I'm just going to propose a couple more questions and kind of food for thought that's going to inform some of our conversations that we're having in the afternoon. And so I want to talk about funding, and we brought this up. There's two different kinds of funding. There's funding increasing budget line items. That's not what I'm talking about now. I'm talking about funding advocacy. It was great to hear that a couple people say that there was interest in funding available for advocacy for the work that people are doing, and I wonder if some of it is being disguised in programming budgets, and it's not being, it's not a line item, but it's still the type, it's kind of the type of work and the type of activities are advocacy-focused activities. So the questions that I am proposing here for us to think about that will guide some things later is, how is advocacy in developing countries being funded? Is there a way to increase that funding at the local level? Like is there possible, I'm just throwing things out, possible partnerships with private sector that are interested and have the same objectives for increasing funding? Not private sector, big multinational companies, but local private sector. And what role can they play? Is there an opportunity, I mean, if you don't call it advocacy, will a government potentially fund some of the things that you're doing, even if you're trying to work within their own system, right? So some of the meetings that you're having in governments, that was a conversation earlier that, they always say that they're budgeting for something, but then the budget doesn't, maybe it's not always allocated, or it's allocated, but it's only used for something very specific. And so is there an opportunity to change the way that we're using the phrasing advocacy, because that's kind of sometimes a dirty word in some places, and call it something different? Can the funding come from someplace else? And then the other thing is, on the external side, how are donors funding WASH advocates in developing countries? And I think there's some really interesting examples. I would love for Andrea to talk a little bit about WSSCC and the funding that you guys are doing towards how there's advocacy components of the Global Sanitation Fund. To talk a little bit there, USAID is funding some West Africa urban sanitation work, but a huge component of that they're calling partnership with government, and it's really advocacy that they're doing. And so how is that, how do they don't often fund advocacy, so what is that looking like? And is it the fact that they're calling it something else and that's how it's working? So there's a bunch of examples that I think when we talk about some of the financing things this afternoon, that would be good to discuss. And some of the Wash It work that the Dutch government is funding that Patrick mentioned earlier as well, that developed country governments are interested in this more and more, and so how do we channel that funding and make sure that it's going to the appropriate types of conversations and messages. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up that we'll talk about later, communications and knowledge sharing. We're doing some of that here, but what's the most effective way to get Southern voices heard in the South? So these types of communications, I'd love to just brainstorm when we talk about evidence-based advocacy and some things this afternoon. How do we ensure that conversations like the one that we're having now is happening on a more regular basis, and even, I would say, removing WASH advocates from the conversation, removing other groups from the conversation? How can, other than Catherine calling Jane periodically and saying, hey, Jane, how's it going? What's happening with you? What are some more formal ways that these kinds of conversations can happen so that when we're solely focused on the programming and the work that we're doing, that we're also aware and can learn from and teach others? Whoops, I just ran into the table for those of you that are on the phone, sorry. And then the last one is messaging. What are the right messages? And that's going to vary, but what messages are working? Who are the targets? Who are the messengers? And so these are things we might not have time to discuss, but these are kind of the important things that I think we need to figure out. And I think Jane's mapping and the planning component that I mentioned before helps with a lot of this process. So any final thoughts before we take a break? Those